We welcome you back to this channel. Today we will talk about haunted painting stories. A couple receives an old painting, an art lover buys a painting of a gloomy cabin, and an art curator brings home a forgotten painting. Go ahead, turn off the lights, and let's take one more step into the world of the unknown.
The Whispering House.
I had always been fascinated by antiques, and when my husband and I got married, we received a painting as a wedding gift. It was an old piece with a dark, ornate wooden frame that seemed to belong to another era. The painting depicted a desolate landscape, twisted trees, and a dilapidated old house in the center. Despite its gloomy appearance, something about it attracted me from the first moment. The painting was a gift from my great-aunt, an eccentric and mysterious woman who always had a peculiar taste for the macabre. I remember her words when she gave it to us. "This painting has been in our family for generations. Keep it in your home, and it will bring you memories." I didn't think much of it at the time, assuming it was just another odd gift from her collection. We decided to hang the painting in the living room, on a wall directly opposite the sofa. For the first few days, we didn't notice anything strange. However, one night while we were watching television, a dull noise startled us. I turned off the TV, and in the silence, we heard a barely perceptible whisper, as if someone was speaking very softly. I looked at my husband, who was as puzzled as I was, and we followed the sound to the painting. But as we got closer, the whisper abruptly stopped. As the days went by, the strange occurrences began to intensify. Lights flickered for no apparent reason, and doors slammed shut even when there was no draft. One early morning, I woke up with a heavy feeling on my chest, as if something weighty was sitting on me. When I opened my eyes, I saw a dark shadow at the foot of the bed. It was tall and thin, with unnaturally long arms reaching toward me. I screamed, and the shadow vanished instantly, but the feeling of terror persisted. I told my husband what I had seen, but he tried to reassure me, saying it was probably just a nightmare. However, the presence of that shadow wasn't limited to that night. It began to appear in different corners of the house, always watching, always lurking. One afternoon, while I was in the kitchen, I felt a fixed gaze on my back. I turned quickly and saw the shadow reflected in the window behind me. I screamed and ran out of the house, convinced we were not alone. We tried to get rid of the painting, but every time we took it to the basement or tried to take it out of the house, something stopped us. Doors would jam, stairs seemed infinitely long, and that incessant whisper seemed to plead for us not to leave it. My husband began to doubt his own sanity, and I couldn't bear the constant feeling of being watched. One night, while trying to sleep, I heard the whisper again. This time it seemed to be right next to my ear. "Help me," said a trembling voice. I got up and followed the sound to the living room. The shadow was there next to the painting, but this time it didn't move when I looked at it. Its eyes, if they could be called that, were two black holes that seemed to absorb all the light in the room. The figure extended an arm toward the painting and pointed at the old dilapidated house in the center of the picture. I realized that something hidden in that house needed to be freed. The next day, I researched the place depicted in the painting and discovered it actually existed, on the outskirts of a small town several kilometers from our city. We decided to visit it, hoping to find answers. The house was in ruins, but its structure was still recognizable. Upon entering, we felt a heaviness in the air, as if we were intruding in a forbidden place. In the basement, we found an old chest. When we opened it, we discovered an old moldy diary. The pages told the story of a family who had lived there and how a tragedy had led to their downfall. The spirit haunting us was that of a woman, her soul trapped within the walls of that house, transferred to the painting as a curse. We took the diary and the painting to a paranormal specialist, who helped us perform a liberation ritual. After burning the painting and burying the ashes along with the woman's remains, the paranormal activity ceased. Despite having regained peace in our home, sometimes at night, I feel a presence nearby. And when I look toward the corner where the painting used to be, I swear I see a shadow watching me from the darkness.
The cabin's secret.
I've always appreciated artistic beauty, so a couple of years ago, I decided to visit an art gallery in the city center. It was a small but cozy place, filled with paintings by local artists. My passion for art had been with me since I was a child. I had always felt an inexplicable attraction to it. So, on a Saturday afternoon, I found myself walking among the walls full of canvases, looking for something to catch my eye. That's when I saw it. Hanging in a dimly lit corner, the painting stood out in a strange way. It depicted an old cabin, almost in ruins, surrounded by a gloomy forest. The cabin seemed alive, as if it was breathing with the darkness around it. The windows were like black eyes watching, and a blurry shadow seemed to move inside. I was mesmerized. I didn't want to keep looking. I had found what I wanted. The price was surprisingly low, considering the level of detail and craftsmanship. I asked the gallery owner, an elderly man with a tired look, about the artist. He told me the painting had arrived without any information, donated by someone anonymous. I decided not to let the opportunity pass, so without hesitation, I bought it and took it home. I was very excited to get home and hang my latest acquisition somewhere in my house. From the moment I placed the painting in my living room, strange things began to happen. The first night, I woke up from a restless sleep, feeling like someone was watching me. I looked around the room, but saw nothing out of the ordinary. I tried to go back to sleep, but the feeling persisted. Days passed, and the atmosphere in my house began to change. The painting seemed to attract darkness, making the living room always dim, even in broad daylight. One night, while reading on the couch, I noticed something that chilled my blood. The shadow inside the cabin in the painting had moved. It was now clearly outlined in one of the windows, watching me. I closed the book and approached slowly. The details were sharper, as if the figure had taken form. From then on, I started having nightmares. In my dreams, I walked through a dark, dense forest until I reached the cabin from the painting. I felt an irresistible pull, even though I knew something evil awaited me inside. I always woke up in a cold sweat just before entering. One night, the dream was different. This time, I managed to open the door and enter the cabin. The darkness was total, and the air was heavy with the smell of damp and decay. I moved forward, feeling the floor creak beneath my feet, until I reached a room dimly lit. In the center, there was a hooded figure, its eyes two black holes that seemed to absorb all light. I woke up with a scream, and the worst part was realizing the dream hadn't ended. The figure was there, standing by my bed watching me. I couldn't move or scream, just stare at those empty eyes as the figure slowly faded away. The next morning, I decided to get rid of the painting. I took it back to the gallery, but when I arrived, I found the place closed and abandoned, as if it had been that way for years. I left the painting at the door and walked away quickly. Since then, things have returned to normal, although sometimes I feel like something is watching me from the shadows. The last time I passed by where the gallery used to be, I noticed it had been replaced by an antique shop. I couldn't resist the curiosity and went in. The owner, an old man with a piercing gaze, smiled when I asked about the previous gallery. He told me there had never been such a gallery there. I left the shop feeling a chill run down my spine. I don't know what that painting was or why it chose me, but I am sure of one thing. There are things in this world that shouldn't be discovered. The next time I feel that inexplicable attraction, I'll remember those empty eyes and walk away. There are some things that should remain in their place, untouched.
The shadow in the dark.
I work as a curator at an art gallery in the city center. I am deeply passionate about my job. The history behind each piece, the artist's technique, the small details that reveal so much about their soul. The gallery is my refuge, a place where I can lose myself in the world of art and forget, if only for a moment, the monotony of everyday life. One day, while organizing a new exhibition, I found a painting that caught my attention. It was covered in dust and hidden in a forgotten corner of the gallery. The frame was deteriorated, and the painting itself had a gloomy air that both attracted and repelled me. It depicted a dark, almost indistinguishable figure surrounded by deformed shadows. It was as if the shadows moved and changed shape with the light. Upon reading the label, I discovered that no one had bought it since it arrived over 20 years ago. That night, driven by an inexplicable fascination and curiosity, I decided to take the painting home. I thought that with a bit of cleaning and restoration, I could find a place for it in my apartment. When I got home, I hung it on the living room wall and sat down to admire it. The shadows in the painting seemed almost real, as if they were about to leap from the canvas and envelop me. I didn't remember seeing any similar painting in all my time working in the art field. That first night, I had nightmares. I dreamed of the dark figure in the painting, slowly approaching me, whispering incomprehensible words. I woke up in a cold sweat, with the feeling that someone was watching me. I shook my head, trying to dispel those thoughts, and after a while, I managed to fall back asleep. The following days, things only got worse. I began to hear strange noises in the house, whispers in the hallways, light footsteps behind me, knocks on the walls. At first, I tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was the wind or the neighbors, but then I saw something I couldn't explain. One night, while reading on the sofa, a shadow slid across the edge of my vision. When I glanced sideways, I saw a dark figure standing in the corner of the room, right where I had hung the painting. A cold chill ran down my spine. The figure didn't move, but its eyes, two dark and empty pits, seemed to pierce my soul. I blinked, and it vanished, but the fear stayed with me. The apparitions became more frequent. The dark figure from the painting began to manifest in different parts of the house. It was always there, watching me, lurking in the shadows of every corner. I felt its constant presence, an oppressive weight that made it hard to breathe. I decided to investigate the painting's history. I searched the gallery's archives and discovered it had been painted by an unknown artist who disappeared shortly after finishing it. Some rumors said the artist had been obsessed with a dark entity that drove him to madness. Others claimed the painting was cursed and that anyone who owned it was doomed to be haunted by evil spirits. Desperate, I tried to get rid of the painting. I took it back to the gallery, but the dark figure followed me. I felt its presence even at work, whispering in my ear, distorting my perception of reality. I tried to burn it, but the flames wouldn't touch it. It was as if the painting was protected by a supernatural force. One night, I decided to confront the figure. I stood in front of the painting, staring at it intently. "What do you want from me?" I shouted. The figure slowly emerged from the canvas, taking a more defined form. It was a tall, thin man with a crooked smile and empty eyes. His lips moved, but he made no sound, simply staring at me without breaking eye contact. I stepped back, terrified, as the figure advanced toward me. I felt an icy cold envelop me, its spectral hand reaching out to me. I closed my eyes, expecting the worst, but when I opened them, the figure was gone. The painting was empty, only the shadows remained. Since that day, the figure hasn't appeared again, but the painting still hangs on my wall, a constant reminder of what I lived through. I don't know why, but something prevents me from getting rid of it. Sometimes, on the darkest nights, I have the feeling that there is a presence watching me from the shadows.
Thank you for journeying with us through the dark passages of these stories. If you enjoyed them, give us a like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss more tales of terror. Until next time, where fear will once again be your companion.